You did.
I put 2 cups of flour in and a half cup of shortening, and I used this handy dandy little gadget to match the shortening up. But you want the shortening to be in pretty good chunkies like that.
Like nice pea size or whatever?
Right, pea size. And now I'm getting ready to put my buttermilk in. So.
Do you measure?
You're supposed to.
But what do you, just do it like you normally do.
Okay.
Because I think that's where I'm messing up, is that my mixture's never wet enough.
Okay.
You know how yours is real wet?
Yeah.
So you're supposed to put 2/3 to 3/4 cup of buttermilk. And what did you just now do? You're doing things, you're like just like Grandma.
Because I don't want to waste the buttermilk that's in here, so I put a little water in it just to shake it up, and I think I'm going to need more.
Okay.
Just because that didn't look like enough to me. Now, and I don't really measure anymore, but I used to, and I use the recipe off of the White Lily flour.
Okay.
That's how I learned to make it.
Okay.
And my Aunt Lois's biscuits were always light and fluffy, so I watched her, and she told me, don't work your dough too much. She said, make sure you don't work your dough too much. So right now I'm just making sure that everything's getting wet.
Okay.
That's really what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to not work it a whole lot. All right. Now, it's where I want it.
And it's real wet.
It is very wet.
Okay.
You want it wet.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to dump it out on a floured surface. And I'm going to sprinkle flour on top so that my hands will work with it.
Okay.
And I just work it enough to where I can get a smooth surface so I can cut my biscuits out. But,
are you going to use Granny's cabinet thing over there?
no, I'm going to use the wooden board because that's what I know.
Okay.
And I really like this. Everybody should have one of these. Everybody should have one of these to work their bread on, because everybody can't have a Granny's cabinet. And this is the next best thing, and this is what I normally use because I normally have Granny's cabinet loaded up.
Okay.
So let me wash my hands just a second.
I'm going to check on my pie. Okay. So, how much flour do you put down? You just sprinkle it?
Scoop it in, scoop my hand in, and I sprinkle. And I want it to be sprinkled because it'll end up
So
sticking.
you're sprinkling it, but it's still
pretty thick. Because because
your
it's very
mixture's
wet.
so wet. Okay.
Right. So I want it to be, but the sprinkling, and the sprinkling's almost like sifting it. That's why I sprinkle it.
Okay.
And I don't just dump it and then smooth it.
And there's a lot of flour there.
Quite a bit.
Okay.
Probably a half cup.
Okay.
Oops. Okay. Now I'm going to dump my dough mixture here on it.
Okay.
Okay.
And it's pretty wet still.
It's very wet. And then I'm going to get some more flour in my hand, and I'm going to sprinkle it all over this. And you'll notice I'm trying to sprinkle quite a bit because it's going to take some. And I probably could have worked this in and just added a little more, but this is
that's because you don't
right.
You don't work it so that it stays light and fluffy. Is that right?
Yes, and if I see I've got too much and it looks like I've got too much flour, I just kind of push it out of the way.
Okay.
Because this time I got too much. And I thought I was going to need it because I had it just a little wetter than I normally have. And then I'm going to work this until I can get it pliable.
But it's still real soft.
It's very soft.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want to work it too much. So I'm just going to...
That's it?
Yeah.
Is that all you do?
That's all I'm going to do.
Okay.
Now this is it right here. Now, I make sure that now I don't need as much flour on bottom. So I'm going to just make sure it's sprinkled good there.
Yeah.
And I lay that down. And I start patting it out. And I pat it out about an inch thick. You want it pretty thick, because that's what makes your biscuits rise. That plus you might lay your biscuits right next to each other.
Okay.
You make sure
so that they
touching.
go up.
So they go
Is that
up.
right? Okay.
So they go up.
Did you use the recipe amount for the shortening?
Well, I used to, but now I kind of gauge it. But that recipe, the only reason I gauge it is because I know just about now how much that recipe costs me. The white lily recipe is the one.
Did you use shortening today or butter?
Oh, I use shortening. But you can use butter. And if you use butter, you just use the same amount.
Cold butter.
Right. Now they have neat little biscuit cutters, and I thought about buying them several times, but I really like my little glass, and it's an antique glass, and I found
You like the size of it?
I like the size of a biscuit it makes,
Show me.
just like that.
Oh,
So,
perfect.
and the reason my mama's was called cat heads was because they were a bigger biscuit.
Her biscuits were called cat heads?
That's what she used to call them, cat heads.
But she didn't do this.
She did not do this. She
Used her hands.
and hers were not as fluffy, but they were the best
Delicious.
biscuits I think I ever had.
No.
But
All right. And then you just put them on the pan.
and then you just lay them on the pan. I always cut out a few first before I lay them on the pan. And I don't spray my pan or anything, but really you could. And it wouldn't hurt to spray it, and it would be less cleaning. And you can just about, with my pan, you can get about 4 biscuits in there.
Perfect.
Yep. That's
All
why
right.
I like that little cup.
Thanks, Mama.
You're welcome. Now,